How are you all doing? I know it's been a minute. I have been going through major transformation, and now that we're entering the quarter of the demon star, Al Ghul, I kind of have a better appreciation as to why. So let me tell you real quick. I listened to an excellent podcast. I've listened to a lot of them about this transit, but if you want to know the mythology behind Al Ghul, which is a variable star, and it's actually, there's 3 stars that eclipse each other. And it's interesting because Al Ghul is believed by the ancients to be the head of Medusa. And she was placed in the sky, and Medusa happened to have 2 sisters. So I thought that was interesting. But they considered it a demon star because sometimes you could see it and sometimes you couldn't. They didn't know that there were multiple stars eclipsing each other at the time. They didn't understand all of that. But usually very difficult things would happen around the time that that star would show up, or how it would interact with other planets and constellations around it. So we have a Mercury Cazimi this weekend, and we also have the new moon in Taurus, which isn't as much about manifesting immediate instant gratification. It's more about the energy of working with everything else that's happening, because Taurus is very practical. It's regulating the nervous system, staying as grounded as possible, and finding practical ways to be your more authentic self, which involves shedding old versions of yourself, like a snake, and Medusa had snakes for hair, which also represented psychic abilities. And Medusa also was one of the only gods, goddesses, heroes of ancient days where almost every representation of her, she's facing, the depiction is of her full face. Where most heroes, if you think about it, gods and goddesses in all of ancient art, it's always a profile standing like this, or when you're a woman, and when you're a man, but Medusa is head on, and we are being called to face everything head on that we have been avoiding, that we have not been dealing with, things that we have buried, things that we have hidden, things that we may be ashamed of, so that we can process and release it, so that we can maybe learn to forgive ourselves, but also face the fact that we might be living in an outdated timeline for ourselves and what has been holding us back. Because it's always us at our core, and our decisions and our choices and our priorities and our fears. And this last week has been one of the most difficult weeks of this year for me, considering everything I've been going through with my family. If you've been watching, obviously, a lot of months. It's going to give me a hot flash talking about it. I have the AC on. A lot of things have been difficult, obviously, but this week has made everything, the liminal space of my life, my past, my relationship with my mother, my childhood, how it shaped me, and how I showed up as a mother, and the mistakes I made that I've owned up to, but also how I'm being treated still based on, let's say, how other people have been manipulated into believing things about me that are not true, and how I have stayed silent for the sake of those I love, for those who are innocent, like my child and people and subsequent future generations that don't need to know the details of horrific things that happened. It's just not necessary to put that pain on them, about things that are in the past, of people who have evolved and changed a lot since then. But you still carry the trauma, and you look at your previous ancestors and how, when they never released that and they never owned their truth in a way that didn't harm other people, how it just passed on generationally. I can't say that word today, but passing down ancestral trauma is a real genetic issue. We can see that in our DNA. There's stories of people who I remember the story of a woman who had this recurring fear of trains and this horrific dreams over and over again around a train wreck. And she had never even been around trains her whole life. And she found out later in life that her grandfather was involved in a horrific train accident. So, you know, some people attribute things to past life, but it's also a valid thing that somebody from our lifeline, our ancestral line, went through, and we are living it. It's still encoded because trauma gets encoded in our DNA. And if we're having children, before we process that, we are giving them our trauma and our ancestors' trauma. So that's what I'm working on now, and that's the project I'm working on now. So when I start putting content out again, it's going to revolve around how do we say our truth in a constructive way to help us heal, whether we need to confess something, you know, in a safe space with anonymity to get it out of our system, to have it held, or do we need to say what happened to us? This happened to me, and I have kept it because I wanted to protect other people, because it would hurt other people more than it would relieve the pain in me. And my love is greater than my need for vengeance against another person because of my damaged ego or whatever. How do you use this rage, this fire that's building inside of you, and channel it in a constructive way? Because in order to truly create something healthy, whether it's another human being or art or food or anything, you have to first destroy something, right? You have to kill a plant to eat. You have to kill an animal if you are carnivorous. I mean, there's always going to be destruction in order to create something. You have to toil the earth and soil before you can plant a seed. The seed has to break open. I mean, destruction and creation kind of work together. Now, when you're arbitrarily destroying just because you want to destroy, because it's the only way you feel powerful, it's because you're small and you're a coward. But if you can, in my simple Aries way of putting it, but if you want to destroy something that is not helping anymore, that is not healing, if you need to destroy something in a way that is hopefully for the greater good, and you want to do it from a space of love, and you need to save your own soul, because you don't want to haunt this realm either, which I talk about in something I will release in this, hopefully this next week, because I have a whole series of like anonymous stories of trauma where people need to have that held for them. I'll put that on my private Patreon. I'll start posting those where everybody can maintain their anonymity, but they can also feel their stories held, along with confessions. As long as we're coming from a space of transmutation, how do I alchemize this into something powerful so that we stop repeating the past mistakes? Because where we're at now is not sustainable. How we've been handling it is not sustainable. So I want to create a more sustainable way to share my own stories and other people's, where you won't know which ones are mine and which ones are someone else's. And they're literally eating me alive, and I'm watching them eat my mother alive too, which I'll talk about more. Probably on my Substack and Patreon in a little more depth, because it's more personal and I get emotional when I talk about it. But that's what I want us all to think about this whole weekend, the 15th, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, through the 17th. That portal is open. The new moon energy is really potent. Mercury Kazemi is happening, and it's going to be making us face anything head on that has outlived a cycle, this old cycle, this old narrative. What needs to die? I also want to think about our emotions and hold space for those, because we're going to be feeling a lot of them. And remember when Medusa was beheaded and her head was being carried, the blood that would drip, they said is what caused the snakes in that area of the world, but also rivers. She's very much associated with water, volcanic stuff, especially black obsidian and diamonds, especially the not rutilated quartz, but I think you know what I mean. Snowflake obsidian, that's it. Incense, smoke, water, those things, anything calculated. We want to feel our emotions. That's what my biggest lesson is. Sometimes I over intellectualize, and it's important that we feel what we're supposed to be feeling. I have buried this pain of being the brunt of anger over how things may have played out in the past because I had to make choices to save my life, and they were difficult ones that other people don't understand. And I'm tired of carrying that. I'm tired of carrying other people's hate and anger and frustration because I've been quiet to save the people I love. And it's isolated me from people because of what I'm not saying. And I needed to feel that in my body and release it and grieve it. And now what do I do with it? How do I alchemize that so that we can do better in the future? And we can address things quicker in the future so that they don't sit stagnant in our bodies, rotting us away, giving us cancer or Lewy body dementia or any of the other horrific things that can happen to us. So I hope you do great. Let me know how you're doing. If you know about your chart and you want to kind of look at how this is affecting you personally, it'll have something to do with that, but it'll also have a lot to do with what you've been avoiding. The more you are avoiding it now, it's going to get throughout the rest of the year, especially in the summer, increasingly difficult to avoid anything, to suppress anything, to bury it. If you are not facing it, you will be forced to. So own your, crud. Do the internal work before you really impact other people's lives. And know that whatever major decision you feel like you have to make, you have to have some accountability as to your role in how far things may have gotten. So I'm sending you lots of blessings. And if you have any stories that you want shared anonymously, privately, to Patreon users only for future use, without your name or any identifying anything in there, I rewrite any story sent to me. I change names. I do anything I can to kind of adjust that. And I'm going to make sure it's a paid Patreon only so that I know who's seeing this. I have names so people can feel safe. But if you are interested in sharing something, if you need to confess something or anything like that, know that if you do, I will use it in a way that will be alchemized for other people to learn and grow from, while simultaneously holding that space with compassion and empathy, as long as you're willing to do it from a space of, because we kind of tend to self-victimize too. You are a victim, but you don't want to be a victim of yourself or holding on to this anymore. We kind of can victimize ourselves when we're perpetuating a narrative in us because we haven't fully released it or processed it. And yes, healing trauma does come in layers. And I talk about all of that. If you've listened to any of my podcast episodes, it's obviously more nuanced and complex than that. I'm summing up, generalizing. Everything is different. Everybody's experience is different. I'm just saying come to it from a constructive space with the intent of releasing it with love for those that you've been protecting this whole time. Not blaming too much, although obviously in some circumstances there is a lot of blame to be given. Let's be real. So anyway, I'm sending you much love and support, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but I feel passionate about this, and I've been kind of trying to be more methodical about how I approach this now. So subscribe to my Substack. You can go to missmicah.com to find my Substack links, my podcast links, because I'll get back on those. But I had to go through this transformation a little internally, and it's been difficult. And there's been a lot of other stuff happening in the background. And I don't feel like talking like a robot anymore, as my son puts it. I want to be a little more authentic. But sometimes when you're just giving information, it might sound a little robotic. I need to put my personality in it more. I want to come at it from a healing space with the intent that I don't want to haunt this realm. When my time comes, I want to be able to move forward. And I also don't want to hang on to things like my mother did and die as slowly and as horribly while putting weight on other people the way she is. I don't know what's in the cards for me, but I do know that whatever, I know control is an illusion, but I think it's also paying attention to what's happening in your genetic history even, and say, how can I do things differently? It's kind of something I do when I do toe readings, is especially when I've had mothers and daughters next to each other, and I'm like, I see a family pattern of, because I'll look at their feet and there's one distinct thing, and I'm like, your mother has it very strongly. You are at a space now to where it can be transmuted into something else. You can have a new perspective on it. You don't have to inherit this. It doesn't have to be like this chronic thing that stays in your genealogy if you choose not to hold on to this anymore. And I think you both know what I'm talking about. And they'll look at each other and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because I see it in their feet. I see the path you have walked, what you're carrying with you in your feet. And I see it in the whole body system too. I mean, anytime you study somatics, you're going to know when you look at people. So anyway, I have to get to my real life job. It gives me immediate finances. But I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Again, please feel free to message me privately. On my website, I have phone numbers and emails that you can message me anything you want to, knowing that it will be completely private. Unless you specifically ask for a shout out with your name, I will never, ever, ever compromise anybody. And I also will never share a client's story, not unless they tell me specifically they'd like me to use it as an example. But I've never used a client's story without permission, which I don't think I've ever used a client story. Just other experiences I've had. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and please hang in there and give yourself a lot of emotional love, a lot of grounding, and a lot of journaling, intention making, and coming to terms with things you know need to shift. Taking some accountability while also owning how you've been traumatized. It's a very tricky balance, just like death and creation and destruction and creation and death and rebirth. All right. Enjoy. Stay tuned.